Hey guys, keeping it casual here, and today we're going to be going over vitamin E. It's a very potent antioxidant that prevents lipid oxidation or lipid peroxidation. So, what are the forms of vitamin E? There are 8 forms divided into 2 families. Those families being tocopherols and tocotrienols. Now, the name tocopherols comes from birth, or it comes from carrying a pregnancy. And the tokos means birth. The feral part has to do with carrying that offspring. And the OL, there's an alcohol attached to vitamin E. And tocotrienol's got a similar thing going on, except the trine part. That's labeling the difference between the families, the 2 families. And within the families, there's an alpha, beta, gamma, and delta version. And if you go out of your way to research anything about vitamin E, the most common one you'll find stuff about is alpha tocopherol. It's the most effective. Well, I don't want to say the most effective form, but it's the most potent form, generally speaking. But sometimes you'll find things about gamma tocopherol as well, and not really too much about the other forms. Those are generally the ones you'll.
Vitamin E is also responsible for a few other things.
Yeah.
Some of those things have been considered controversial because a lot of scientists, a lot of studies, have gotten conflicting results on certain conclusions. I'll go over those later, but for now, I'm just going to tell you what vitamin E is capable of doing. Vitamin E is good at protecting fats from oxidation, and one of the places we see this most often is within the cell. There's vitamin E within the cellular walls, and that's a good thing because our cell walls, they're made with fats. That's right. They're made with fat. So if a free radical comes by, then there's a good chance that the cell wall could be compromised by that free radical. It could be damaged. It could be torn asunder by that free radical. So vitamin E helps prevent that damage from happening to begin with. And vitamin E is also a potent vasodilator. And what that means is a vasodilator just means it expands the blood vessels. So think of your blood vessel just expanded, okay? That's what vitamin E is doing. Vaso meaning vein, dilator meaning changing in size. But in this case, it's bigger. And then vitamin E also inhibits platelet aggregation. So effectively, that just means it acts as a blood thinner. It keeps particulate. I don't want to say particulate. It keeps things from clotting within the bloodstream. And most of the time, that's a good thing. And vitamin E also inhibits cholesterol production. And I think in America, we could use a bit of that. And let's see what else. Mixed tocopherols have a stronger effect on lipid peroxidation and platelet aggregation. Remember what I was saying about alpha tocopherol and gamma tocopherol being some of the most potent forms of vitamin E? Well, that's typically true, but if you get a broader mix of vitamin E, then you're more likely to get a stronger effect. At least that's in some cases. At least with lipid peroxidation, platelet aggregation. Vitamin E also protects us from UV light, or at least a certain portion of that spectrum. It helps protect us from UVB light to a certain degree. Whenever we're exposed to UVB light, ultraviolet B rays, we end up using up some of the vitamin E that happens to be in our skin. More specifically, it's in the sebum. Or sebum. It ends up being in the sebum, but it's also in other places in the skin, but it ends up there. It ends up protecting us there. Anyway, whenever we're exposed to UV light or ozone, our vitamin E levels, they lower. Okay? They lower. But that's not all. Vitamin E levels also decrease whenever we have a skin wound. And it's not entirely clear why that happens because, again, studies have shown conflicting results. Like there was a study done on mice that shows that if a diabetic mouse was given vitamin E, then it was more likely to increase the wound closure time. But the effect on normal mice wasn't apparent. So there's a lot of nuances in vitamin E that I've noticed that don't always correlate. Like you don't always get a clear-cut answer with vitamin E. That's what I've noticed. And another thing that'll decrease your vitamin E levels is lead and ozone, as well as other environmental pollutants. So because these levels are decreasing, it's believed that vitamin E is protecting us from the free radicals that are generated or already there via these contaminants in the environment. So there's that. And what else? Diseases. So with dementia, it's sort of hit and miss, again, conflicting studies. But vitamin E in combination with vitamin C has shown some little bit of improvement in cognitive function in those with dementia, for those who will get it. And the same thing could be said of those with ALS. Again, lots of contradictory results, and that's why a lot of vitamin E uses remain controversial. As far as scar tissue goes, well, vitamin E didn't really show too much effectiveness with healing scars. Probably because it wasn't very effective in healing wounds either. Not so sure about that, but yeah, vitamin E just needs to be studied more. That's all I can say. But at the very least, they know for sure it's a vasodilator. It's good for your circulatory system. They know that for a fact. Although as long as you get it within reasonable doses, of course. You don't want to overdo that stuff.
So, what are the symptoms of taking too much vitamin E? Well, the thing about that is it's not so clear-cut. There's no overt symptoms of taking too much vitamin E, but you do run the risk of increasing your chances of hemorrhaging. Aside from that, there's not really too much, and I guess you increase your chances of taking a dirt nap altogether. Okay, let me slow down and explain that. So the hemorrhaging part, that's probably due to the fact that vitamin E is such a good vasodilator and it's such a good blood thinner. So without the capacity to be able to clot your blood, you won't be able to stop bleeding. So if you hemorrhage, then you're not able to stop it, then, well, it's probably because you couldn't clot your blood, or your blood couldn't clot, but you get what I mean. Anyway, and the all-cause mortality, let me explain that. So a meta-analysis was conducted over 19 studies. So meta-analysis is just a fancy way of saying a bunch of guys looked at a bunch of studies, they looked at their data, came to some conclusions, blah blah blah. Anyway, so the conclusions that were came up with, God, the conclusions they came up with was that if you take too much vitamin E, you run the risk of dying earlier, just a bit. That sounds that sounds pretty awful, but these guys are taking 400 IU plus. They're taking doses that are way above the limit, and there's a reason for that. Those studies were being conducted to find out whether vitamin E had some use in, say, dementia or prostate cancer or maybe retinopathy. And one of the reasons why vitamin E use or its benefits remains controversial is because of one of the studies that was analyzed in the meta-analysis, the SELECT study. It was found we keep one thing in mind. This study was cut off early. It was supposed to last at least 7 years, but they shut it down because they didn't see any benefit of their patients taking vitamin E. So they cut it off. And when you study people for a long time, you should study them for a long time, not just a couple years. But anyway, that was one of the studies that really left its mark on vitamin E, because when they followed those men after they stopped taking their vitamin E supplements, they found that those men had an increased risk of prostate cancer by about 17%, and that's a pretty big number. That's a pretty huge risk. That was one study, but there's another study that was conducted on Swedish men who smoked, and they took doses larger than the ones in that study. It's about 1,000 IUs, if I recall right, and they found that vitamin E reduced the risk of prostate cancer. So with conflicting results like these, it's kind of easy to see why the benefits of vitamin E can be controversial. It's kind of hard to sort out what's what. Maybe it has to do with the form. Maybe in the SELECT study, the vitamin E that was used was artificial, so maybe that had something to do with the increased risk of prostate cancer. Who knows? I don't want to believe, honestly, I don't want to believe that taking loads of vitamin E will increase your risk of prostate cancer, but you can't be too sure. You gotta stay objective about this sort of thing. But I can't ignore that other study either. There's more cases like this. Sometimes the vitamin E is shown not to help very much at all, and yeah. So, what are the signs of a vitamin E deficiency? There are a couple symptoms that you should know about. One of them is retinopathy, and retinopathy basically just means damage to the eyes, damage to the retinas, and that can lead to impaired vision. There's also peripheral neuropathy, which is damage to the peripheral nerves, but a vitamin E deficiency isn't limited to just damaging peripheral nerves either. It can also cause ataxia, which is a loss of control of bodily functions, such as being able to eat, things like that, losing motor control basically. And there's also decreased immune function as well. So it's clear that vitamin E plays more than just a role in immune function. So, what are some good food sources of vitamin E? Well, the first one that comes to mind would be wheat germ oil, and it's the most potent form of naturally occurring vitamin E. I like to use this stuff when I feel like I might be vitamin E deficient. I'll just slather some on my arms and I'll be like, rub them together. That's what I'll do. But if you don't like wheat germ oil or the way it smells, it's got a pretty strong smell. It's not like it's not terrible. It's just I wouldn't walk around in public wearing that, and it'll stain your clothes, kind of brownish. But it's not too bad. It doesn't taste too bad either. But I mean, a lot of that vitamin E is gonna end up in your skin anyway, so just rub it on. Rub it on. Oh, if you don't like wheat germ oil, you can always go for a sunflower oil or sunflower seeds. Seeds and nuts tend to be the most potent sources of vitamin E, and I think that might have to do with the fact that seeds and nuts tend to have the most unsaturated fatty acids, and those tend to be the most susceptible to oxidation. So it only seems like natural that they be together. Otherwise, you'll get some stanky nuts, and no one likes stanky nuts. No one wants that. Nah. So be glad there's vitamin E in those nuts. Be glad. All right. So, sunflower seeds, almonds, peanut butter. Not technically a nut, but that's a pretty damn good source of vitamin E. Like to put that in my shakes. Delish. Beet greens too. Spinach. Perfect for breakfast burritos. Pumpkin. Red bell pepper. Asparagus. Mango. All good sources. And of course, avocados. Such good. Yeah. You can't get enough avocado. I mean, I can't get enough avocado. I don't know about you guys, but man, avocados with so good together with food. Yum. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you learned something new about vitamin E today. And as always, I'll catch you guys laters. See ya!